Good afternoon. You are in room B, session 7. This is the nuts and bolts of EGIS, the City of Oberlin's EGIS project with Mr. John Woodard of the Davey Resource Group. John is also known as Woody and has been working in the field of Geographic Information Systems since 2001. John holds the following professional certifications: GISP and EA, which is Enterprise Architecture. He has a master's in Geography and GIS from the University of Akron, Ohio, and a master's in Digital Science concentrated in Enterprise Architecture from Kent State University. His book, Enterprise GIS Concepts and Applications, was published this year. He is the GIS IT program developer for the Davey Resource Group. John is also an avid scuba diver and beekeeper. Before I turn this over to John, there is one more session this afternoon. Following that, we will also have a wrap-up session, so I encourage you to attend that as well. And we do have a break in between that in the hallway, so I encourage you to attend that as well. Please hold your questions until after John is finished, and then we'll answer your questions after that. Go ahead, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I just remembered to turn off my phone, so I shouldn't be embarrassed by that. Thank you, Jennifer, for the wonderful introduction. I do have an introduction slide that I'm not going to go over because she went over it in my abstract, but it is in the presentation. So the one note is I did have 10 years as an instructor for United States Navy Reserve Seabees. And normally in our personal interactive ones, I tell people not to worry because I'm projecting my voice. So I still tend to project my voice. So if it happens and I come up louder on your speakers, it's not your system, it's probably me. So let's go ahead and get started. Today is a story about a successful partnership between a municipality and Davey Resource Group, a commercial entity. And the city formed a partnership with Davey Resource Group to help develop an enterprise GIS. The partnership was successful, and they now have a system that supports public works, the water department, municipal power and light services, and the general maintenance division, which just came on board this year, along with stormwater. And the initial phase was completed for just less than $50,000. Now, the city, to start at the beginning here, the city determined that they needed an enterprise system because they had a lot of information in various departments that was incompatible with other departments. The systems weren't working together, and it was all being dropped basically on one person's head to get these things gathered together, produce a map for the city engineer in construction season so that the city could bid the project. The city could then manage the flow of the project and make sure that's working right and see how it placed within the city. And one person was being tasked with gathering the existing information, creating a CAD drawing, making a map, getting everything ready for the bids, and then sitting down to city engineering and reviewing the bids. To say the least, she's a little overwhelmed. So at this point, however, I'm going to take a small break from the story and discuss enterprise architecture. Because enterprise architecture is the overriding foundation for the city's enterprise GIS project. Now, enterprise architecture is a field where the architecture or strategic plan is created to organize and marshal all of the available resources to support the organization's business statement, goals, capabilities. It is an overarching strategic plan that is considered the blueprint for success. That's a slight different from Enterprise GIS. And EGIS is primarily concerned with providing GIS capabilities to all the divisions, departments, or staff within an organization. So it stays within the areas of data and information, whereas the enterprise architect develops a strategic plan that encompasses the entire organization. So in the world of enterprise architecture, GIS systems and EGIS systems would fall under data architect, the position of the data architect or the information architect. Because in reality, GIS information are dealing with the organization's information. So there's a subtle difference here now between how people look at data and information. An enterprise architect learns quickly that data is simply a piece. It has no context. Therefore, really, it has no meaning. An example of data would be 25. They named Darrow. The word street. None of these really have any context or meaning to them. So you convert data into information by providing it some form of context or meaning or definition. There it is. So the examples would be data, 25, context, people, add them together, you have 25 people. Type of information, census. The word Darrow, added the word road, now gives you a street name. Well, consider 25 plus Darrow plus road plus Stowe plus Ohio equals 25 Darrow Road, Stowe, Ohio, which is an address. Individually, these words, these numbers, don't have any actual meaning until you give them context. And in GIS, we're providing people a spatial context to look at their information. One of the early definitions I was given in my first GIS class was that GIS people, professionals, put the data against the earth in the form of a map and analyze it for patterns. But what we do is we give data a context, therefore we convert data into usable information. And that's the driving point of any enterprise system in GIS. The difference is I like to use enterprise architecture as an underlying foundation to help organize things so when it feeds into your enterprise GIS, it's an organized process. It doesn't run helter-skelter. So the EA contributions to the project, I'm going to borrow from the field of enterprise architecture, is I'm going to determine the current state of the city's IT infrastructure and information. Then we'll sit down and determine the goals. Where do they want to go with this? What do they want to do? What are the responsibilities? Who is the leadership? That has to be decided. Then we sit down and we come back and define the vision of a future state. And by the way, these might seem a little mixed up, but they don't all have to happen in order. They can happen concurrently. They can happen, hey, I came up with goals this year. Next year, let's sit down and take a look at our situation and see where we want to go. But the key thing is, all together, they determine the path from where you are to where you want to be, or the current to the future state of the organization. And I'm going to do a little bit of a dive into enterprise architecture so you can see some of the process that went together to developing the EGIS system for Oberlin, because it all feeds together. So the departments involved is Oberlin Municipal Light and Power, which is City Electric, Public Works, they handle city infrastructure, the engineering department, which is planning, the water department, we had the fire department involved with fire hydrants and stormwater control. Next year, it looks like the building department's coming on board, the zoning department will be coming on board, the city manager's office is now want to take a more active hand in the project. So phase 3 will be pretty exciting for us. So in the beginning, the city reached out to me. They said, we need some advice and some help. Can you come take a look at this and tell us what we have? And I did. I came out and I did a high-level strategic study of the city's IT and GIS infrastructure. I compiled a report form that described the current state of the information system. And to give you some highlights, I discovered that the city had over 40 years worth of legacy information housed within several different versions of AutoCAD. Some of it was on paper. A lot of their background information, like water pressure, pipe type, materials, was housed in a very, very old MS Access database, which was actually on a computer that was so old it was running a virtual shell of Microsoft because they couldn't update the operating system anymore. And so they actually made a virtual computer on a slightly younger machine to keep the database going, because they'd had a programmer come in and he did some proprietary stuff with the Microsoft database and they couldn't update it. So all this would have to be updated, information pulled out of the Access database, redone, and then put into a GIS system is what I recommended. So we sat down and we looked at this, and this is what they came up with as somewhat of a vision of the future where they wanted to be. They wanted all the legacy data quality checked, converted into a viable GIS format, available to anybody who needed it, and then easily updated, maintained, secured, backed up, and available. They wanted an EGIS system that would provide GIS to all departments, obviously contain all the legacy data, be accessible whether they're in the office or they're in the field. I love this one. Keeps everybody organized. And most importantly, enabled accountability so someone couldn't go in and change something, and then if it was wrong, they couldn't track it back down. So we started off with goals. And this comes right out of one of the EA handbooks I have. This is the goal structure. At the top is the vision, or the enterprise goals of the system. And then the next level down, you see the goal name. And this example has up to 5. And then underneath that, the sub goals. The idea is when you complete a set of the sub goals and you met them, then the goal above them has been met, and therefore the system has met the goal. So if you look at 1.3 to 1.1, if all those little sub goals have been met, then the goal for 1 has been met, and that means the system has goal number 1 finished. Now, this looks like this. When you look at the Oberlin EGIS. Now, one thing I want to make clear is this is not static. This is a living, breathing document, and it's undergoing changes even today. We're in phase 2 of the 3-year project, and we go back and revisit this every couple months. Say, okay, we made it to this goal. Can we add to it? What are we going to do? I thought I turned this thing off. Sorry about that, folks. My phone just caught me off guard. There we go. Coming back to this. So just a couple weeks ago, I sat down with Dawn, who's the administrator for all this, and said, do we need to take a look at the goal chart? And if you look at this, make accessible. From the field is 1.1. In the office is 1.2. 1.3, all city departments need to be able to access the EGIS. Otherwise, if goal wasn't number 1, hasn't been made, hasn't been completed, the system is not successful, or it needs to work towards that. These goals, you are the one who determine which ones are the priority. In this case, make accessible happened to be the first space where I plopped it down when we did our brainstorming session. It just kind of stayed there. Have accurate information. This is critical for any information system. So establish a data architecture. What are the data standards? What are the principles? There's a number of sub goals in here that I haven't added because it just makes the charts too big for presentation. Notice in 2.2, legacy data has been cleaned and formatted. 2.3, all the developer plans and as-builds are in the information and they're accurate. And you go on and on. Now, this can also be built out as an Excel sheet. So here it is in Excel. You see the vision, which is accessible. The level, that's a first level goal. That goes back to that right here. You can see right here, this is what we call level 1 hierarchy. These would be level 2, and so on and so forth, level 3, all the way down the road. I tend to simplify it from the EA standpoint because EAs get really detailed with this. In GIS, we don't have to be that detailed. But I like to highlight things and break them down. So level 1 is accessibility. 1.1 from the field. Now notice in the bubble chart, you just have a short 2 or 3 word sentence that tells you the name of the goal. Here in the goal chart, you actually get to flesh it out. People can look at it. So accessibility, ensure that any department or person can have access to the information system. From the field, ensure accessibility to the EGIS from the field. The intended results for 1.1, provide data gathering from the field. I know it sounds simple and kind of redundant, but it really helps people to understand what the goals are if you fill out the chart this way. And then over here, you give it a timeline. Okay, we want it accessible from year 1 to year 5 is the time frame to work at. At the end of 5 years, it needs to be completely accessible to everybody. And that's another thing I want to bring up, is these enterprise projects should not be built as a one-shot option. If you are a city considering installing enterprise projects, you don't have to do them in 6 months. They don't have to be done in a year. In fact, I recommend against it because you lose the flexibility of building in steps. If you make a mistake or something doesn't go the way you expect it to, you only have to go back and redo maybe steps 2 and 3. Whereas if you wait until the end of 9, 12 months and say, hey, we need to go back and change steps 2 and 3, well, that means every step that went forward from that point on now has to be changed. And that's going to incur a cost in money, a cost in manpower, and sometimes a cost in new software and new infrastructure. You can avoid that if you take the time to do it in a series of small steps, make sure that you're building toward the ultimate goal. And that's what the goals do. They provide the destination for your path from where you are today to where you want to be. And the reason that works is if you look at the time frame, it's 5 years. So we start in 2019 and we go to 2024, but at 2.5 years, we have a milepost, a mile marker, whatever you want to call it. In 2021.5, you should be hitting some of these goals. So if you look, what I'm showing you now is the progress model chart. It sounds really complicated. Let me back up here. Whoops, too far. It's simply this Excel sheet with a couple columns hidden, moved over to make it more readable. And then we've added 4 columns. The start time, the halfway point of the milepost, is it complete? And notes, was this done in phase 1? Who's working on it? So if you go down here and you look at this, accessible. We expect to have the whole thing accessible in 2024 to everybody. Well, we did that in 2019. It's complete. We're experimenting with a couple personal devices that people want to use, so that's why things aren't completely green. But overall, they can take any tablet out in the field and sign into the system and work with it. They can use it from any desktop, any laptop. The hold up right now is someone's got, it works with the iPhone. No, it doesn't. There's a problem with someone's iPhone. That's the only reason why we're not at 100%. Because right now the system isn't working with the one iPhone. So they're working on that. Accurate information. We have the data architecture established. It has not been formally adopted by all departments. Therefore, the milepost is shown off of brown. We hit the milepost. We have the data architecture. It's still being worked on. but we still have 3 more years to finish it out, so we're ahead of schedule there. The legacy data cleaned and formatted. It's in the EGIS. It's done. Right now, they're doing a scouring of all their departments' filing cabinets and desktops and stuff like that to see if there's anything left. So right now, we have it shaded green as complete, which gives the overall goal to a darker shade of green, because the only thing we're missing right now is the data architecture being accepted, and then the city manager has to work with the developers to get everything as a PDF. And we're trying to find out if we have all the city's information. And we've already had a project which started last year, completed this year, and that was GPS in the water valves. They went out there with a tablet. They got the water valves within sub-meter accuracy, which is what they wanted for all 400 water valves. So it works. That's shaded a light green because we've completed that. The city can add data. It can edit the data. They can assign their own users to it, the project, their own project crews. They don't have to come through DRG. So it's successful. Therefore, it's green. And as you can see, whoops, can't scroll down with this. As you move down, as things get fully completed, they get a dark green. Now down here at the bottom, keeping technology current, that's the goal for technology and applications, which I see got all squished up there. They wanted the technology to be kept current, ensure that their IT department can provide support, and they're going to track that through reduction of system problems, slow responses, and crashes. But the sub goals for that one's interesting. They wanted the system that would work with the available technology because the city didn't really have the funding to go out and buy new computers. And they wanted the software to be there. More importantly, you can't see it because I think it's cut off, is that they wanted third-party integration. Well, we sat down with them, we looked at some software packages, and DRG has a software package called Asset Manager that's subscription-based. So all they need is a hotspot with access to the Wi-Fi from the field, or Wi-Fi login within any building or at home, and password. So now it works on all their computers because it's an internet browser-based system. They can use it in the field, no problem there. It works with any software package because you can export data out as a shapefile, as an Excel table. You can bring data in as a shapefile, Excel tables, flat files, geodatabase files. And more importantly, we are able to tie it into third-party software platforms or data sets. And this is where the fire department came on board, is the fire department maintained the city's pressure ratings and the city maintained the hydrants. So we tied it in to where now they're working off the same data layer. The fire chief can see what the hydrant maintenance records are. The city can see where the pressure ratings are, so they can actually get ahead of the game. If someone notices that a hydrant is low on pressure, they go out there and check it. The fire chief is ecstatic because he reports this information to the state, and now he's able to give the state a really complete picture of the fire hydrant system. And the city's happy because they're able to flag out which department needs, or the fire department needs on the hydrants, and they can move faster to get things fixed. But now the key thing is they're working from the same data set that's in the same EGIS system that both of them have access to. So here's the vision of their future or future state. We talked about this. And that's what the progress model is showing them on track to be. I know I'm going a little fast, and sorry, I'm just trying to skim through a lot of this. The next thing was leadership positions and responsibility. In the progress chart, you see that we're kind of stuck on this because the city is sorting this out. We are mentoring and moderating. We're not dictating to the city who does what. But what we came up with was that there'd be one coordinator for the EGIS system, one supreme super administrator. And that person would assign each department an administrator, along with all the various passwords and functions. The EGIS coordinator reports back to the city manager. The department administrators will be assigned by a department head or be the department head themselves. They will assign the departmental users, assign those people their permissions, assign whether or not the public can view this on the website and how much data they can view. They can see just simply a representation, or they might be able to call up certain pieces of the data table. They'll determine who's a subject matter expert for the department, and then they'll report back to either A, the department head they're assigned, but they'll coordinate with the EGIS coordinator. And they all like this, so right now the department heads are figuring out who's going to be assigned this role within the department. And this allows each department to maintain control over their data set, still work with the other departments, and takes a lot of pressure off the EGIS coordinator, because now they don't have to be the one deciding who's going to be all the sub-department head users, who's going to be subject matter experts, who's going to set up permission for the work crews. That's all handled through the department. The only thing the coordinator has to worry about is making sure that the department administrators can work together and that they can view each other's data if they want to. So here's a blurb about the Davey Resource Team's role in this project, was to create a balanced approach to design and implement the EGIS system. This allowed us to work with the city, respect the city's budget that they allotted to the project, and break it down into phases. The system was up and running for the city in 6 months. We were still coordinating the quality control checks, the legacy work, and all the legacy data sets. But the nice thing for the city is once we had the basic idea of what they needed, we built the attribute tables. We assigned them the polyline, polygon layers, and the city could start adding the new information as we worked on the back end to fill the legacy data into their system. There was no real delay in them starting or having to wait for us to build the system with all the data. The system was literally up and running as soon as we got through the development phase of what do you want for street? Do you want material? Do you want length? Do you want name? We can use the county data. We can use the county sheet data sets. We pulled that in, modified the attribute table to what the city wanted, and bam, they were up and running. They were doing their sign inventory 2 weeks after we finished the sign inventory layer for them. It was that much of a turnaround. So at the heart of the city system is the asset manager. And this is a screenshot of it because I just simply not sure I can trust the internet to allow me to have access to it during Zoom, to be honest with you. But you can see on the left, the data architecture states that we're going to label things so people can see it without having to do a lot of grouping. So PW stands for Public Works _ catch basins. So that's public work catch basins, and everybody knows that that falls under the jurisdiction of the stormwater person and the public works coordinator, because the public works coordinator assigns the cleanout crews to the catch basins, and the stormwater person inspects the finished product after it's been cleaned out or if there's a problem. Now the data sets I've been talking about come back into the back here. And now you can see, I wish I could show you what they looked like before, but I can't because they're in various tables, papers, AutoCAD formats. But what we did was we brought them in, we made new data tables, we digitized and filled out the information as we went along, or we imported from AutoCAD and through the magic of scripting, filled in a lot of these areas with the AutoCAD text tags, I'm not sure what they're called. So on the left, you can see here, the city can now make its own custom reports. And this section is actually a little bit easier than GeoCalculator. You can find it on ArcMap. And they can track who's doing what in production. So you got production quality control assigned, that's addresses. production quality check on side versus on street. That would be manholes. Is it on the side of the street or is it in the street? We have a production report that was available to Ms. Ferro, so she can call it up and see what was being done, how it was being done. You can see work order tracking. We started setting up work orders for them. The layer that's currently selected is Public Works sanitary manholes. And you can tell because that one's actually been highlighted in green here. And the icon's white. And so the key thing for the city is this allows them to tie it into the financial part. Anybody who's ever worked with the GASB 34 standards knows that the city has to report new infrastructure and depreciation on existing infrastructure back to the state and people who provide grants. So anything that's a GASB 34 item needs to have a new ID added to it. And then it's going to be linked through these reports back to the financial information. So the city engineer or public works coordinator can simply sit down, select one of these, and it'll be GASB 34 when it's done. Select that, and it's just going to go through the system, calculate all the depreciation or all the future depreciation or current depreciation, new items, planned items, and send that over to the financial team to send over to the auditors for the final report. And right now we're still in production with that because we're waiting the city to come back with the ID tags that we need for the items. So you see, this is a team effort. We're not coming in and saying, hey, the city has to have it this way. The city tells us this is what we want, and we sit down and we find a solution for it. So to date, the project accomplishments are we have a fully functional enterprise GIS system that was created for the city. All of the city's legacy data has been converted into proper GIS formats and uploaded into the EGIS. And this includes a little over 9,000 points with 492 points, those are the water valves, verified by a GPS system, 64 miles of sewer, 49 miles of water mains. The majority of that was done in 2019. The EGIS system itself has 10 layers of point data, which include your basic outfalls, hydrants, water valves, four polyline layers, which is streets, sewers, and water mains. And this year we're going to be adding their stream network to it. And the stormwater coordinator is looking for a water flow model. And then we have one polygon layer right now, which is all the city-owned parcels, but they're getting ready to upload the city zoning layers, city zoning by parcel, and city zoning by area for the city manager and city council who have come on board with the project. So if you want to look at the raw numbers, here's a slide that summarizes all that for you and where the actual piece wound up at. Notice under the water department, under the fire hydrants, that's A here, we've integrated it with the fire department's IT system. And it used to be called Firehouse. They recently got a new software package and I cannot remember the name of it to tell you what it is. But it is fully integrated with them. And the fire chief has sent me a couple emails saying how much he likes me to go into a meeting and know that they're not going to have 10 minutes of discussion of who has the most recent and greatest data set. The other note is on the water valves that were GPSed, we easily hit plus or minus 3 feet, and most of them were within 18 inches or less of the actual water valve when a measurement test was run by the city's water department. The Oberlin Light and Power crew are very happy because they have all the power poles in there. It was arranged to where the attachments are numbered 1 through 10, with 1 being the top and 10 being the bottom. That was done because an internet company wanted to come in and run wires on the city poles. And there was a big meeting about that, and no one realized, what was really attached to the poles. So with this system in place, with their poles and their wires in the system now, we set it up to where there's a form when someone wants to come in and move things on the pole, A, the city's wires stay at number 1. B, the next major utility, which I believe is First Energy, sits at number 2. And then they have to log the positions of the next several items, who owns them, and what position they're placing their wires at, and have to label those wires as owned by that company and have it entered into the system. So within the next year or two, they'll have a fully filled out picture of what's on each pole, because they got an internet company coming in and doing that for them right now, doing that in some poles that they're hanging wires. And the work crews are currently getting that inventory set up for it. So what was the cost? That's always a good question. Phase 1, 2019, $48,000. Phase 2, which is 2020, $48,000. That's the budget that they've given us. So the cost for this fully fledged system in 2 years of development has been $96,000, which is a lot cheaper than having to do it in 1 year, say 12 months, at $100,000, and then finding a change order at month 9 or 8, which kicked in another $30,000, $40,000 from a mistake or something that needed to be changed. We have made several changes to the system as it's moved forward, as it's developed out, and more users have come on board. The other thing the city likes is they don't have to pay for additional users. The additional users are assigned by one of the administrators. They go out in the field with a tablet and a hotspot, and they're good to go. Oops. So the project's been very successful. In 2019, it was recognized by the state of Ohio's Geographically Referenced Program, OGRI, with a Best Practice Award. And there's a little write-up for it that the award recognizes organizations in Ohio that are establishing or maintaining GIS projects which adhere to OGRIP's goals, objectives, and are the highest quality. So we're very proud that the city received this award, and we consider that a feather in our cap because we did good work and the city did good work. It was a true partnership across the board. I can't stress that enough. I'm coming up on my planned time because I want to leave time for discussion. So if you're interested in more information about this, I wanted to do a selfless plug here, is my book is available at Amazon. There's the link to it. And that describes a lot of my core thoughts about how an enterprise system should be set up. Plus, I'm now doing free lunch and learn online seminars, or you can call me up and we can arrange a time for you and your team to have a seminar with me. And the subject right there, enterprise systems. What is an enterprise system? Enterprise systems, a path to the future, the goals and responsibilities, how to convert data into information, the technology and applications part of it, which is very important, and then enterprise system in GIS, how it all ties together. And I'm going to wrap it up there at 38 minutes with a big thank you. I appreciate your time and attending my presentation, listening to me. I'm not as entertaining when I'm sitting in a chair, but I've tried. And if you have any questions, now is a great time to ask them. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions at this time for Woody? Any questions?
The presidential debates were probably more exciting.
All right. Well, if there are no questions, again, I want to remind everybody that there is one more round of sessions starting. We just had somebody said that they missed the intro and they're sorry that they missed your intro. I do want to remind everybody that we have one more session starting at 3 o'clock. So please catch that if you can. We will be having our break and networking between 3:30 and 4. So please, if you can, visit our virtual hallway for that. And then we will be having our wrap-up session between 4 and 5. Please plan to attend that if you can. This is basically just to wrap up the conference. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, and then basically just to do some more networking. So please attend that if you can. And again, we appreciate you, Woody, for the great session. It was very interesting, and I definitely learned some interesting things. So my field is in water and wastewater, so it was great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. This is my second year presenting at camp. I was a new camp member. I joined 3 years ago, and I really think that this is a quality show, and I'm glad to see it went off this year, and I'm glad to be able to contribute.
Well, we greatly appreciate you attending, and we thank you for this wonderful presentation.